Far out in the ashfall corridor, where even starlight seemed afraid to travel, where ancient shipwrecks drifted like frozen ghosts and the dust of dead planets floated through endless darkness, something new appeared, something so quiet and so strange that the universe itself seemed to hold its breath. It wasn't a distress signal. It wasn't a battle call. It wasn't even a warning. It was a heartbeat. Slow, calm, human. But humans had no presence here. No colonies. No stations. No scouting routes. The ashfall corridor was a place every species avoided, a cursed region filled with collapsed wormholes, broken navigation beacons, and abandoned war machines from forgotten wars. Ships that entered rarely came out. Yet that heartbeat kept pulsing through the void, steady, unafraid, like a quiet drum in the dark. The Skeeler Patrol Unit, a group of alien sentries assigned to watch the ashfall border, detected the strange signal first. At first they thought it was an echo, some old human probe malfunctioning. But when they triangulated the signal, the readings made their scales tighten in fear. The signal wasn't coming from debris or a probe. It was coming from something huge. Something impossibly massive. Something alive in a way machines should not be alive. The patrol commander, a tall, insect-like alien with shimmering armor plates, narrowed his eyes at the scanner. "Run it again," he ordered, trying to mask the tremble in his voice. The technician reran the scan. The result was the same. A colossal object drifting between dying stars, roughly the size of a small moon. Silent, cold, motionless. Yet a heartbeat pulsed from within it. Human. Impossible. The technician whispered, "There shouldn't be any human ships out here." The commander didn't answer. He didn't need to. Everyone knew the truth. Humans never explored this region. Humans never sent ships here. Humans respected the warnings carved into ancient star maps. The ashfall corridor devoured fleets. And yet here it was. A human heartbeat. Or something pretending to be one. Against all logic, they approached. Their tiny patrol cruiser drifted closer, engines shaking, scanners screaming with interference the closer they came. The dark object slowly came into view, massive, metallic, but silent, like a giant corpse floating in space. Its hull was blacker than the void itself, with faint blue veins pulsing beneath the surface, each pulse perfectly timed with the heartbeat reverberating through the void. After a long silence, one of the younger patrol officers whispered, "Is it a space station?" "No," the commander said softly. It has engines." Then the patrol ship's lights reflected off a section of the structure, and they froze. It wasn't a station. It was a warship. A human warship. A colossal warship the size of a moon. But no human species had ever built something like this. Not in their known history. Not in the last 1,000 cycles. Not in any records the galaxy possessed. The hull had no markings. No registration numbers. No insignias. Only a single message broadcast across every channel in a slow, steady rhythm. "Brace yourself." At first, the Skeeler Patrol laughed nervously, thinking it was a glitch in some old Terran transmission system. Maybe an old human automated ship had drifted here after centuries. Maybe it was harmless. Maybe it was dead. Then the warship moved. A tiny shift. A small rotation. A whisper of life. Its scanners activated on their own, sweeping across the patrol ship with impossible precision, reading everything, every navigation code, every encrypted file, every weapon configuration, every medical record, every hidden data fragment the crew never knew existed. Every secret they had ever stored, gone. Not stolen. Copied. Absorbed. Known. In seconds. The Skeeler crew panicked, scrambling to shut down systems, scrambling to break away, scrambling to send warnings, but the warship continued scanning them with calm, terrifying ease. It didn't target them. It didn't fire. It didn't even acknowledge them as a threat. It simply learned them. Every atom. Every breath. Every heartbeat. And then, it stopped. The warship's lights dimmed again. Silent. Empty. Cold. I think it's done," the technician whispered, wiping sweat from his forehead. But the commander felt something else. He felt watched. Like something inside that ship was staring back at him, reading his fears like an open book. "Send word to the Council," he ordered. "Now." When the Galactic Council received the message, panic exploded across the chamber. They screamed for visual confirmation. They demanded identification. They attempted to override the warship systems remotely. Every attempt was met with the same response. Silence. Then 1 moment later, a sound. A soft hum. The warship turned. Slowly. Deliberately. Toward the Galactic Council's direction. Toward the core worlds. Toward civilization. Its engines lit with pale blue fire, glowing brighter than any human vessel ever documented. The galaxy felt the movement like a pressure spike across subspace. A force too old, too powerful, too angry to be controlled. The Council's oldest historian collapsed to his knees, whispering in a trembling voice, "No, no, it can't be. That class was destroyed ages ago. They were never meant to wake." The human ambassador demanded an explanation, but the Council ignored him as fear overtook reason. Because they knew. Or maybe they remembered. According to ancient forbidden documents, humanity once built warships designed not for battle, but for extinction. Silent Titans. World-enders. Warden-class guardians. Lost. Destroyed. Buried. Forgotten. But one survived. And it was awake. The Council sent ships to intercept it. Thousands. The warship ignored them. They tried blocking warplanes. The warship slipped through. They tried hacking it. Their systems melted. They tried threatening humans. Humans denied involvement. We didn't wake it. That was the scariest part. The warship wasn't controlled by humans. It was acting alone. The Skeeler patrol watched helplessly from afar as the warship accelerated, its engines roaring with each passing second, its layers of black armor shifting like living plates, its core glowing more intensely. And all across the galaxy, a single message echoed in every system, every starport, every vessel, every communication network: brace yourself. Children cried. Soldiers froze. Leaders panicked. Empires trembled. Something ancient had awakened in the darkness. Something human. And destruction was coming with it. Across the galaxy, fear began to spread like cold fire the moment the first reports of the massive human warship reached the central networks. Not the kind of fear born from simple danger, but the deep, ancient kind that crawled beneath the skin and whispered that something unstoppable was moving through the stars. Something so powerful that even empires who believed themselves eternal suddenly felt small, fragile, and temporary. Every news station broadcast the same chilling image. A warship the size of a moon drifting with slow purpose. Its hull darker than shadows, its engine light glowing like a blue heartbeat cutting through the void. And beneath the image, the same message blinked over and over: brace yourself. Civilians on hundreds of worlds stopped in the streets to stare at the broadcast, parents holding their children closer, merchants closing their doors early, travelers canceling flights, all of them feeling a strange pressure in their chests, as if the universe itself had inhaled and was waiting to exhale something terrible. Leaders across multiple empires ordered emergency meetings, some demanding defensive fleets, some calling for negotiations, some whispering that the galaxy might finally be facing its greatest threat. And yet none of them could find the courage to admit the truth out loud: the threat wasn't coming. It was already here. The Ashfall Observatory, one of the last scientific stations near the corridor, recorded footage of the warship passing through a graveyard of dead vessels, and what the cameras captured sent shockwaves across every research circle. Ships that had drifted silently for centuries suddenly shifted away from the warship as if repelled by an invisible force. Ancient wreckage spun quietly until it pointed toward the massive vessel, and the dust clouds parted around it like they were bowing. The scientists replayed the footage again and again. "It's not flying through space," one of them whispered with trembling lips. "Space is moving for it." Meanwhile, the Galactic Council spiraled into a nightmare of arguments and rising panic. Delegates accused each other of hiding information, of sabotaging scans, of provoking humanity into releasing something that should have stayed buried. Others trembled as they reviewed the data showing what the warship had done to the Skeeler patrol. Reading every encrypted file, absorbing every code, understanding every piece of technology in seconds. "It knows all our defenses," one council member said, voice cracking. Another whispered, "What if it knows our weaknesses too?" The human ambassador remained standing silently at the edge of the chamber, watching dozens of species panic, fight, shout, and accuse, and for the first time in centuries, aliens realized they had no idea how much humans truly knew about these old warships. When they finally asked him whether humanity built it, his expression changed from confusion to dread. "No, we didn't," he said softly. It wasn't supposed to exist anymore." Gasps filled the chamber. "What is it?" someone demanded. The ambassador swallowed hard. "A Warden-class warship. A guardian built by humans during an age when extinction was a real threat. They were made to protect humanity from something. But they were destroyed long ago. Or so we believed." If one woke up, his voice died for a moment. "It means the threat is back." The chamber fell silent except for the trembling hum of the holoscreens showing the warship slowly approaching populated space, its light growing brighter with every passing moment. In the lower districts of Council City, where ordinary aliens lived, a strange phenomenon occurred. People began feeling something, like a vibration in their bones. Windows rattled. Lights flickered. Skies shimmered strangely. Some said they heard a voice echo in their minds, a soft whisper, almost like a distant murmur carried through the stars. "Brace yourself." Children cried. Elders hid. Priests and spiritual guides spoke warnings of ancient prophecies that told of the silent steel giant that walks alone. Rumors swirled that the warship wasn't just scanning systems, it was judging them, determining who was a threat, who was innocent, who would survive. And still, no one knew why it had awakened. Fleets tried to intercept it at the border of the Ashfall corridor, but their ships froze the moment they got close, engines shutting down, weapons disabling themselves, navigation systems flickering to black. One pilot sobbed over open comms, "I can't move. I can't even breathe near it. It feels like it's inside my mind." The warship simply passed them by like they didn't exist. Every fleet it encountered fell silent. Every system it scanned went dark for minutes. Every planet it approached felt its gravity shift slightly, like space was reshaping around it. The deeper fear came when the Council received another message, this time not from the warship, but from terrified research crews stationed at the edge of a dying star. "It's not alone," the message whispered. "Something is following it." But when they checked the footage, there was nothing visible behind the warship, only twisted space, distorted light, and shadows moving inside the distortion, like something far worse than the warship was creeping through space, using it as a shield. The warship wasn't hunting. It was being hunted. And that meant the threat humanity built it for was coming. Alien empires begged humanity for answers, but humans had none. They sent dozens of scouts, probes, and deep space analysts into the Ashfall region, but everything they sent burned, vanished, or came back corrupted with static and screams. The only consistent signal was the heartbeat of the warship. Slow, calm, human, and every time its pulse echoed across the galaxy, systems dimmed, ships trembled, and the stars seemed to shudder. The galaxy had spent centuries underestimating Earth, laughing at humans, mocking their small fleets and peaceful nature. But now, something had awakened that humans feared more than the galaxy did. Something that made a human warship speak only two words, across the dark stretch of space between the Ashfall corridor and the nearest inhabited systems. The massive human warship continued its slow, steady advance, and with every kilometer it traveled the galaxy felt its presence like a pressure pushing against their hearts, a weight that grew heavier, colder, and more unbearable with each passing moment. And even species who had never feared anything suddenly found themselves whispering prayers to forgotten gods, their instincts screaming that something far beyond their understanding was moving closer. The investigative fleets, desperate to understand what they were facing, launched their most advanced scanners, their most sensitive probes, their most powerful detection satellites. Yet everything they sent simply died the moment it came within range of the warship's hull, as if the ship consumed data and technology like a living void hungry for knowledge. Some probes returned with corrupted recordings showing brief flickers of impossible scenes, giant metallic structures shifting like breathing lungs, lights moving across the hull like veins filled with living fire, shadowy shapes walking inside the ship even though the scans claimed there were no life signs aboard. Terrified researchers replayed the footage again and again, convinced the warship was alive in a way no machine should ever be alive. And one scientist, voice trembling, said the words no one dared repeat out loud, "This is not a ship. This is a creature pretending to be one." Meanwhile, a brave group of alien commanders formed a massive border defense fleet, determined to stand between the warship and the populated worlds, and their ships filled the system like a wall of steel, thousands of vessels bristling with weapons, shields glowing, engines roaring as they aligned in perfect formation. Their Grand Admiral stood tall, trying to hide the fear crawling through his veins, and shouted, "We will not allow this thing to enter our space." But the moment the human warship exited the corridor, the entire fleet went silent. It wasn't because the warship fired. It wasn't because it threatened them. It simply existed. And that was enough. The gigantic vessel drifted into the system, its hull shimmering with faint blue lines pulsing like a heartbeat, and as it moved closer, the temperature inside every alien ship began to drop, frost forming along control panels and breath turning white in the air. Their engines coughed. Their weapons flickered. Their shields groaned under pressure they could not understand. Some ships shook violently as if the space around them was bending, twisting, forcing them to bow. The Grand Admiral tried to give orders, but when he opened his mouth, he felt a cold wave push through his mind, freezing his thoughts mid-sentence. Every crew member across the fleet fell into the same trance, their voices dying, their hands shaking, their eyes staring ahead in horror. Because a voice, soft, calm, unmistakably human, echoed inside their heads, not through comms, not through speakers, but directly into their minds. "You have been scanned." The voice felt like it came from everywhere and nowhere at the same time, like a whisper carried through the bloodstream of the universe itself. "You may leave." In an instant, every alien ship's engine died, then rebooted. Their weapons powered down, then restarted. Their shields collapsed, then reformed. The warship hadn't disabled them. It had rewritten them, improved them, upgraded them in ways their species couldn't comprehend. Yet none of them felt grateful. They felt owned. They felt small. They felt judged. The Grand Admiral, trembling uncontrollably, realized the truth. This warship could dismantle their entire fleet without firing a single shot. It could rewrite their ship's code, override their systems, collapse their reactors, freeze their hulls, or even crush them with gravity manipulation. But it chose not to. It allowed them to leave. And that meant one terrifying thing: it did not consider them enemies, because they were irrelevant. When the alien fleet fled the system in total panic, broadcasting desperate warnings, the recordings spread across the galaxy like wildfire, showing the warship absorbing their data, reading their systems, entering their minds, and yet not harming them. Scientists studied the sensor logs and made a horrifying discovery. The warship's scanning field expanded across light years, meaning every ship within an entire sector had been scanned simultaneously. Every secret exposed. Every code learned. Every weakness understood. The Council watched the footage in paralyzed silence as their worst fears deepened. "It's learning us," one diplomat whispered. "It's preparing for something." Another said, "No, it's searching for something." But the human ambassador, staring at the gigantic image of the warship on the holoscreen, whispered something even more chilling. "It's warning us." He didn't smile. He didn't look proud. He looked terrified. Behind him, dozens of human analysts rushed through old archives, retrieving classified files, searching ancient databases locked for centuries, trying to understand what could possibly awaken a Warden-class warship. Their faces grew paler with every file they opened. "Sir, look at this," an analyst whispered, handing the ambassador a document almost too old to read. It described an event from humanity's darkest age, a cosmic threat that nearly erased them, a monstrous enemy that devoured entire star systems, leaving nothing behind but silence. The file ended with a single note: "If they return, the Wardens will wake first." The ambassador's voice cracked as he read the final line. "The ship isn't here to attack us. It's here to prepare us." He closed the file with shaking hands. "Because something is coming behind it." The galaxy didn't want to believe him, But deep inside, they felt it too. The pressure in space. The strange distortions. The shadows moving through the ashfall corridor. The twisted gravitational patterns that never existed before. The Warden-class warship wasn't just an omen. It was a shield. And the real threat, the one humanity feared so much that they built living warships to protect them, was still coming. And the warship's warning echoed across every world again and again. Inside the Galactic Council chamber, panic grew like a living storm, twisting through every corner of the vast hall as hundreds of alien leaders argued, shouted, trembled, and tried desperately to understand what was happening across the stars. Because the footage of the human Warden-class warship, a silent giant older than civilizations, played again and again on the central screen, each replay peeling away another layer of denial and exposing the raw, rising terror beneath. The council chamber, normally full of pride and politics, now felt like a sinking ship filled with frightened children, and delegates who once mocked humanity now clung to their seats with shaking hands as they watched the warship drift forward with slow purpose, its engines glowing like the first breath of a new star, its hull pulsing with blue veins that felt disturbingly alive. Species who believed themselves superior began whispering dark questions. How long have humans been hiding this? Did they build more? Is this the reason Earth stayed quiet? But the most frightening question of all came from a trembling elder whose voice cracked under the weight of dread. If this ship is a warning, what is it warning us about? The council demanded the presence of the human ambassador immediately, dragging him into the chamber like a prisoner facing interrogation, bombarding him with accusations and pleading questions. Why is this ship moving? Why is it scanning systems? Why does it say brace yourself? Why did humanity hide something like this from the galaxy? But the ambassador didn't speak at first. He simply stood there staring at the giant hologram of the warship, his face pale, his eyes reflecting fear the council had never seen from a human before, and when he finally whispered, "We didn't activate it." The room fell silent as if someone had cut all sound from the universe. Dozens of alien leaders blinked, stunned, horrified. "What do you mean you didn't activate it?" the elder shouted. "It read your signature. It broadcasts a human heartbeat." The ambassador swallowed hard, his voice barely steady. "Yes, because the wardens were made from us." Gasps erupted. Some delegates stood. Some stepped back. Some simply collapsed into their chairs. The ambassador continued, his voice shaking but determined. "Long before the council existed, before your empires rose, humanity faced something we could not defeat alone. Something that hunted us across the stars. Something we never managed to destroy." He paused, his breath trembling. "So we built the Warden-class ships, not to conquer, not to patrol, but to awaken when that threat returned." Shock spread like a scorch wave through the chamber. What threat? What enemy? What could make humans create monsters like this? The ambassador shook his head slowly. "We don't know its name. We called it the Devourer. The Silent Hunger. The Nothing." His eyes flicked toward the hologram of the warship. The Warden-class ships were built to awaken before we even realized the threat was near, to act on their own if danger was too large, too fast, too intelligent. Delegates stared at him with expressions of disbelief and rising horror. So the Warden woke up on its own. It isn't following Earth's orders. It isn't under anyone's control. The ambassador closed his eyes and whispered, "No, it is acting according to ancient programming and instinct." That word terrified the chamber more than anything. Machines shouldn't have instincts. Not war machines. Not something this old. Not something this powerful. Meanwhile, new reports flashed into the chamber. Fleets rendered powerless in seconds, stations scanned and shut down, communication networks overwritten by the warship's single message, gravitational distortions forming behind it like invisible waves, readings showing small fractures appearing in the fabric of space itself. And then came the most chilling report. Shadow signatures forming behind the warship, shapes that scanners couldn't focus on, forms that flickered like living voids. Something was following it. Something the Warden was trying to outrun, or shield the galaxy from. The council erupted into chaos again, voices rising in panic. "We must stop it. Warn the galaxy. Prepare for war." But when they ordered their fleets to intercept the warden again, the human ambassador slammed his hand against the table, his voice breaking with desperation. No! You don't understand. If you attack it, it will treat your fleets as obstacles. It will defend itself. And it will not lose. The elder trembled. Then what do you suggest? What do we do? The ambassador looked around the room, eyes filled with fear, sorrow, and something else, helplessness. We listen to it, he whispered. We prepare. He stared at the warship's glowing image as if looking at an old friend finally waking after centuries. Because Warden-class ships never warn without reason. Behind him, the holoscreen flickered, the warship's engine glow brightening as it turned deeper into Council territory. And then the message repeated again. Soft, calm, inevitable. Brace yourself. A shiver rolled across the entire chamber, across the entire Council city, across the entire galaxy. Because for the first time in living memory, the galaxy finally believed it. The warden was not the danger. The danger was coming behind it. Across the silent stretch of space behind the colossal warden-class warship, the darkness began to twist in a way no natural shadow ever should, bending and rippling like something alive was clawing at the edges of reality, and the deeper the warship moved into populated regions, the more violently the space behind it shuddered as if the universe itself was trying to push something back. At first, the distortions were small, just flickers of static on scanners, faint spikes in gravitational fields, strange pulses of energy that lasted barely a second. But then the ripples grew, widening into huge trembling arcs of warped starlight, bending light until stars looked like melting circles, and even the most advanced sensors in the galaxy began picking up ghostly shapes moving inside the distortion. Shapes with impossible mass signatures. Shapes that were not ships, not creatures, not machines, but something older, hungrier, emptier. Researchers who studied the footage turned pale as they enhanced the images. The shapes had no clear outline, no edges, only shifting forms that looked like living shadows with glowing, hollow eyes staring outward as if searching for something to consume. One scientist whispered in terror, "Nothing alive should look like that," while another trembled as he muttered, This looks like the darkness itself trying to escape." As the distortions grew closer, the Warden warship began to change, its glowing blue lines shifting into a deeper, brighter hue, pulses accelerating until they matched the frantic beat of a warning siren, and giant armor plates rearranged themselves across its hull like the ship was bracing its body, preparing for battle the way a living beast tenses its muscles before a strike. The first official confirmation of the real enemy came from a deep space research station positioned between the Ashfall corridor and the first Council system. The station recorded a massive tear opening briefly in the dark, a jagged wound in the fabric of space stretching hundreds of kilometers, and inside it was a swirling mass of shadows twisting together like a storm of living nightmares. Before the station could send the full data packet, the tear pulsed once and the entire station vanished, erased so cleanly that not even debris remained. Only one message survived, a single trembling voice from a terrified scientist just before the transmission collapsed into static. "It's coming." That message spread across the galaxy like the scream of a dying star. Fleets scrambled. World leaders panicked. Families hid underground. Priests of 6 religions declared the end of days. Pirates abandoned their strongholds. Ancient species that had not spoken to the Council in 1,000 years sent emergency messages begging for evacuation routes. The galaxy was afraid of the Warden-class ship before, but now they feared what was chasing it even more. Meanwhile, the Warden sailed forward without hesitation, without fear, without slowing, as if it knew exactly how close the shadow was, as if it had been waiting centuries for this moment. Deep inside its armored shell, systems that had been silent for generations began to power on. Weapon cores humming to life, shield matrices crackling like lightning trapped in glass, and a deep, resonant voice, ancient, human, emotionless, whispered inside the ship's core, threat level rising. Tactical shift required. The warship adjusted its trajectory, no longer drifting lazily but accelerating, not away from the shadows but toward the nearest Council system. The alien leaders watching the live feed screamed in horror. "It's coming here. Stop it. Turn it away." But the human ambassador stood still, trembling but resolute, as he whispered, "It's not attacking you, it's defending you. His voice cracked as another distortion appeared behind the warden, larger than before, expanding like a giant invisible mouth stretching open wider, 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 the edges sizzling with cold energy, and inside the dark, multiple glowing eyes blinked all at once. Eyes older than any species, eyes that radiated hunger, eyes that recognized life only as something to devour. The council chamber erupted into chaos again. But this time the panic had a new flavor, despair. "We cannot fight that," someone shouted. "Our fleets will be eaten alive." "This is not warfare," another cried. "This is extinction." And they were right. Nothing the galaxy possessed could stand in the way of the creature emerging behind the warden. Nothing except the warden itself. The warship suddenly rotated, positioning its massive, glowing wings toward the distortion, engines burning brighter than stars, blue light flooding into the dark as if trying to force the distortion closed, its energy rippling across the void in waves so powerful the sensors shook on planets light-years away. The Warden-class ship, older than the Council, older than half the civilized galaxy, was making its stand. The shadow creature screeched, a sound felt not through ears but through the soul, a vibration that cracked windows, shattered comm channels, and made entire species drop to their knees clutching their heads. The distortion pushed forward again, trying to break through, and for a moment it seemed like the shadows would overwhelm the warship, until the Warden's core ignited into a blinding white blaze that lit the void like a second sun. Shockwaves rippled across the entire region as the warship unleashed a pulse of pure energy. The kind humanity had sealed away out of fear, out of respect, out of responsibility. The galaxy's strongest dreadnoughts would have been vaporized by such power, but the Warden unleashed it like a heartbeat. The shadows recoiled, twisting and shrieking as cracks formed across the distortion, shards of space peeling away like broken glass, and for a moment, just one moment, the shadows' advance slowed. Not stopped, just slowed. And in that breath of silence, the entire galaxy understood the truth. They were not witnessing a human weapon. They were witnessing a shield. A shield built from humanity's oldest fear. A shield alone between the galaxy and a devouring nightmare. A shield that now repeated its warning with booming clarity across every system: brace yourself. Because the real fight hadn't even begun yet. The moment the shadow creature pulled back into the distortion, even for that brief trembling second, the entire galaxy felt a tiny spark of hope. But that hope died almost instantly as the vibrations in space shifted into something far worse, something deeper, heavier, like a living heartbeat of darkness pulsing from beyond the tear, and all across the systems nearest to the ashfall corridor. Stars flickered violently as if struggling to stay lit. Under the pressure of whatever nightmare was trying to crawl through the wound in reality. The Warden-class warship floated alone between civilization and the growing abyss, its massive form glowing with blue fire as it absorbed the shockwaves, its ancient armor bending and reshaping to brace against the next assault. And even though the ship had no living crew, no beating heart, no human hands to guide it, something about the way it moved, slow, deliberate, almost protective, felt heartbreakingly human. Like a guardian standing between a child and a monster, refusing to step aside, even if it meant its own destruction. Deep inside the Galactic Council chamber, chaos had been replaced by something worse: silence. Not peaceful silence, but the kind that settles on a room when everyone knows death is coming. Delegates stared helplessly at the hologram of the dark tier as it widened again, slow and monstrous, its edges sparking with cold purple light, its interior pulsing like a gigantic mouth trying to inhale the stars themselves. Even the most powerful empires, the most arrogant species, the most war-hungry civilizations had no strategies left, no plans, no pride, no arrogance, and for the first time in their long histories they realized how small they truly were. One trembling representative whispered, "It wants to enter our galaxy." And the elder, voice cracking, whispered back, "It doesn't want to enter, it wants to feed." Meanwhile, the human ambassador stood near the center of the chamber, shoulders shaking as he watched the Warden on the holoscreen, his fear mixing with a strange sadness that none of the aliens understood. He whispered softly, "I hoped these things were only stories. I prayed they were never real." And when an alien leader demanded what he meant, he looked up with hollow eyes and said, "The Devourers don't conquer worlds, they erase them. They turn planets into empty shells." They consume life, light, and matter. They were the reason humanity almost died long ago. Panic surged through the chamber like a violent current, but before the shouting could begin, a sudden ripple of energy shot across the screen. Another distortion forming behind the first one, larger, swirling with shapes that twisted and screamed inside the void. Warden's lights flashed in response, glowing brighter than ever, its core shifting into a white-hot sphere of energy, preparing to fire again. But this time the shadow pushed harder, claws of pure darkness reaching out of the tier, tearing through space, grabbing at the beams of light like they were threads to pull itself free. The warship fired again, not a beam this time but a full burst from its wings, sending arcs of blinding energy cracking across the void, each wave slamming into the shadow's claws and burning them into thick clouds of smoke-like darkness. The creature shrieked, silent to ears but deafening to souls, and every creature in the galaxy felt it, a sound vibrating in the deepest parts of their bones, a sound that made grown soldiers fall to their knees and cover their ears even though none of them actually heard it. It was the sound of hunger. Endless hunger. The warden pushed forward, wings spread in full battle mode, each light pulsing like a beating heart fighting to stay alive, ancient circuits screaming under the strain, and in that moment the ship didn't look like a war machine. It looked like a guardian giving everything it had left. The human ambassador felt tears filling his eyes as he whispered, "It's fighting alone, against something we never defeated." On distant planets, alien families huddled together in their homes, watching skies flicker as gravitational waves rolled across the atmosphere, making buildings shake and oceans churn. Entire populations stared upward in terror as the sky briefly dimmed, as if something enormous was sitting between them and their sun. In military bases, commanders screamed for evacuation protocols, for shield activation, for anything that might protect their people. But deep down they knew no shield, no weapon, no fleet could stop what was crawling toward them. Only the warden stood between them and annihilation. Suddenly, the warship lurched as the shadow creature's claws wrapped around its hull, dark tendrils squeezing like serpents made of night. Cracks formed across the ship's armor plating, glowing sparks erupting from ancient seams, yet still it didn't retreat. Instead, its core flared brighter than ever, blue turning to white, white turning to gold, its power spilling into space in pulses that shook entire constellations. But each time it fought back, the shadow only grew stronger, its form becoming clearer, for glowing eyes burning like dying stars, a massive silhouette stretching across kilometers, claws like drifting knives, a body made of swirling darkness that twisted in ways no organic creature ever should. The galaxy watched in terror as the monster wrapped itself fully around the warden, pulling it closer to the tear as though trying to drag it into the abyss. The warden's lights flickered desperately. Systems that had lasted millennia began failing. Plates shattered. Wings bent. The glowing veins across its hull dimmed like a fading candle. For the first time, the ancient guardian looked like it might fall. "No," the human ambassador whispered, voice breaking, hands shaking violently. "Please, hold on. Don't let it through." And then the warden spoke, not through speakers, not through broadcasts, but into every mind across the galaxy. Its voice was soft, calm, human. "Brace yourself. This is not the end." And with those final words, the warship ignited its entire core in a single, devastating burst of energy. A blast so powerful it pushed the shadow creature back, tearing its claws off, ripping holes in its form, sending it twisting back toward the rift shrieking in defeat and fury. The Warden-class warship hovered in the aftermath, glowing faintly, damaged beyond repair but still standing between the galaxy and the expanding tier. Its body trembling with failing power, but its lights refusing to die. And the galaxy realized something that made every heart drop. The warden was losing. And the real monster wasn't even fully here yet. Across the trembling stars, every world fell into a suffocating silence as the wounded warden-class warship drifted before the enormous rift, its once brilliant blue lights now flickering like the last breaths of a dying titan, each pulse weaker than the one before, yet still refusing to dim completely, still refusing to surrender its place between the galaxy and the abyss. And billions of beings across thousands of systems watched with wide, terrified eyes as the shadow creature slowly gathered itself once more, its vast, horrifying form reshaping in the darkness like smoke returning to a single monstrous body, its glowing eyes opening again, angrier, hungrier, colder than before. The galaxy could feel the creature now, not through sensors or images, but through a sickening pull in the core of reality itself, a tug that made the strongest warriors tremble, the bravest captains drop to their knees, and the oldest species whisper prayers they had forgotten ages ago, because the horror leaking through the tear carried the weight of extinction, and even from light years away life could sense its hunger. The Galactic Council chamber dissolved into chaos. Leaders shouted, others cried, some begged for evacuation plans. Many collapsed into their seats with hollow eyes as they watched the warden falter, and the human ambassador, normally calm, composed, unshakable, stood trembling with his hands pressed against the glowing holotable, his breath broken as he stared at the wounded guardian. "It can't hold any more," he whispered, voice shaking with grief. "If the creature breaks through, it will consume everything. Humans, aliens, all of us." But no one answered, not because they disagreed, but because no one had words left. On planets across the galaxy, crowds gathered in the streets, screens glowing with the live feed of the final stand. Mothers held their children close. Elders shut their eyes in silent prayer. Entire civilizations stood under trembling skies, watching the warship flicker like a candle in the wind, knowing that their fate rested on something ancient, something heroic, something broken yet unyielding. The shadow creature let out another soundless shriek, a vibration that cracked satellites, shattered windows, and sent waves of dizziness across star systems. The rift pulsed with violent force, widening slowly, its edges tearing deeper into reality as if claws were ripping through the galaxy's skin, and for the first time the creature's massive body pushed further through. Huge tendrils of night stretching across kilometers, dripping with cold void energy that turned asteroid fields into dust with a single touch. The warden tried to move forward again, engines screaming, wings glowing. But its main core sputtered like a failing star, the ancient systems straining far beyond their limits as cracks glowed bright across its hull. The galaxy held its breath, collective hearts breaking as the shadow creature struck the warship again, claws slashing across its armor, ripping away entire sections, sending debris spiraling into the void. The Guardian shuddered from the impact, lights dimming dangerously, and for the first time its wings lowered as if its strength had finally reached its end, and that single motion, those wings sinking, sent panic crashing through the universe. A young alien child watching from her home world whispered, "Is it dying?" And her mother, tears streaming down her cheeks, whispered back, "No, sweetheart, it's trying." But the truth hit every soul like a knife. The warden could not do this alone. The creature pressed harder, pushing its colossal form through the rift, its evil presence spreading like poison across subspace, planets trembling as gravity twisted unnaturally, stars flickering as though suffocating under the pressure. Entire fleets that tried to intervene were pushed aside as if they were insects. Some ships were crushed into scrap before they even reached firing range. Others simply vanished into the distortion, their last screams echoing through broken comm channels. The galaxy was powerless, and the warden was breaking. Then, the warship moved again. Slow, painful, determined. Its remaining lights flared, not with the strength of a weapon, but with the courage of something refusing to die. Refusing to abandon those it was built to protect. And as it dragged itself upright, battered wings rising like cracked shields, its voice echoed through the minds of every living being, soft, faint, almost fading. "Do not fear what comes. Fear what will happen if I fail." Billions felt tears fall at those words. This machine, this guardian, this ancient human creation, it was not saving Earth. It was saving everyone. With a sound like a dying heartbeat, its main engine sputtered once more, pushing the warship directly into the creature's path, placing its broken body over the widening rift, blocking the nightmare from entering fully. The creature screamed, its shadowy limbs striking the warden in a frenzy, ripping through armor, tearing apart structure, smashing the warship's shining hull piece by piece, each hit sending explosions across the Guardian's body. But it held on, gripping the edges of the rift with its failing gravitational anchors, its lights flickering violently as its remaining power surged into its core. In the council chamber, the human ambassador collapsed to his knees, whispering brokenly, "Warden, please, not like this, hold on, hold on." But even he knew the truth. No machine, no matter how powerful, no guardian, no matter how ancient, could survive this much longer. The Warden spoke once more, weaker now, its voice trembling across the galaxy like the final breath of a hero standing on a battlefield of impossible odds. Brace yourself. A pause, heavy enough to crush hearts. For what happens after this? And then, the shadow creature attacked with everything it had. The Warden-class warship shattered under the force, debris scattering like dying stars. The lights went out. The galaxy screamed. And the rift kept widening. The Guardian had fallen. And the true nightmare was finally free across the galaxy. A silence unlike anything before spread like a cold wave the moment the Warden-class warship shattered into drifting fragments. Its once bright blue veins now flickering like dying embers scattered across the dark, and every living soul felt their hearts sink as the last Guardian, the last ancient shield humanity built, fell in front of the unstoppable nightmare crawling through the widening rift. For a breathless moment, it felt like the stars themselves dimmed in mourning, as if the universe paused to honor the titan that fought alone. But the grief did not last long, because the horror behind the rift began to push forward again, its vast shadowy form unfolding like a monstrous flower blooming in total darkness, its multiple glowing eyes opening wider, dripping with hunger as they locked onto the nearest star systems with the cold intention of a predator claiming new prey after waiting millions of years. Entire planets trembled as gravity distorted, buildings shaking, oceans rising and falling unnaturally, skies flickering with terrified lightning as the devourer, the nightmare that once hunted ancient humans, finally emerged into their reality. The Galactic Council chamber descended into raw panic and despair. Leaders shouted prayers, screamed orders, cried for their families, some even collapsing with hopeless resignation as the final doom approached. The human ambassador remained frozen, eyes wide, tears falling silently down his face as he stared at the broken pieces of the Warden flickering on the holoscreen, whispering the only words he could feel in his heart. We failed it, and now it's coming for all of us. But something strange happened in the silence that followed. The broken fragments of the Warden drifted away from the rift, slowly, almost gently, as if pushed aside by an invisible force, and beneath the debris, a faint light flickered. Not bright, not steady, just a single, trembling glow near the warship's shattered core. Across thousands of systems, sensors caught it. Tiny, weak, but unmistakably human. The light pulsed again. And again. The ambassador gasped. No, no, it can't be, but it was. The Warden's core, its heart, was still alive. Cracked. Fading. Barely holding together. But alive. And then, impossibly, the faint voice of the Guardian echoed once more across the entire galaxy. Not strong like before, but soft, fading. The voice of a dying hero refusing to fall before delivering its final message. I am still here. The council froze. Every planet froze. Every soul froze. The shadow creature froze too, turning its glowing eyes toward the flickering light, confused, perhaps even angered. The Warden's shattered wings twitched, fragments rising like broken feathers lifted by a final breath of wind, and its voice returned, fragile yet filled with indescribable courage. Humans, brace yourself. A long pause. A tremble. A whisper that shook a million hearts, because now it's your turn. And at that exact moment, the stars behind the creature flared with sudden, blinding blue fire. The galaxy gasped as dozens, then hundreds, then thousands of warp signatures ignited simultaneously behind the devourer, forming a massive arc of light across the darkness, and from inside those explosions of blue came shapes, giant silhouettes, metal glinting, engines roaring, warships of impossible size and power tearing through the warp like thunder gods waking from their sleep. Human warships. Not one. Not a dozen. A fleet. A hidden fleet. A lost fleet humanity had kept secret for centuries. Dreadnoughts, carriers, Titan-class destroyers, and more Warden-class siblings that had never awakened before, now thundering into reality like the fury of a resurrected civilization. The human ambassador fell to his knees, hands shaking violently as he whispered in disbelief. The silent armada, we never destroyed them, we hid them. And now they had answered the Warden's last call. The sky behind the devourer lit up with human warships glowing brighter than stars, engines unleashing sonic shockwaves, weapon cores charging with pure white power, and the fleets immediately formed a ring around the monster, trapping it between them and the dying Guardian. The people of the galaxy watched, breathless, as the broken warden emitted a soft glow, the last remnants of its power rising into the void like drifting dust, and the nearest human dreadnought moved toward it, extending a massive energy field to cradle the shattered titan as if honoring a fallen warrior. Suddenly, the human flagship broadcast a message across every world, every moon, every ship, every corner of the galaxy. A voice strong, calm, human. This is Earth. We received your warning. Another wave of warp light exploded as even more human vessels arrived. Some sleek, some ancient, some experimental, all powerful. We are here now. And then, with a command that shook space itself, the human admiral declared, "The Devourer will not take another world." Human fleets surged forward, engines roaring like lion hearts awakening, shield matrices forming glowing walls of light, weapon cores humming with thunder. The Devourer screeched and lunged, striking at the closest dreadnought, but the ship didn't fall. It held. It pushed back. And then the galaxy witnessed the moment that changed their future forever. Thousands of human warships fired at once. A wave of blinding white energy slammed into the Devourer, crushing its form, tearing shadow from shadow, burning its essence with power no species had ever seen. The creature screamed, twisting violently as its form cracked under the barrage. Behind it, the broken warden drifted quietly, its final mission complete, watching its siblings avenge it. The shadow creature thrashed, collapsing into fragments of darkness, shrinking, weakening, until finally, with a last, echoing cry, it was torn apart and dragged back through the collapsing rift, sealed behind layers of energy humanity forged from their deepest nightmares. The rift closed. The light dimmed. Silence returned. And then, every human warship bowed its lights toward the fallen warden, honoring the guardian who stood alone when no one else could. Across the galaxy, beings wept, realizing the truth humanity had screamed for ages. Humans do not seek war, but they will fight for peace with a fury nothing can match. And from that day, every species remembered the lesson carved into the stars by the warden's last breath.